Okay. Hello and welcome to Redesign Your Life Today. I'm your host, Daniel Kobryner, high energy, heart-centered life and business coach, international motivational speaker, and passionate believer that transformation is always possible, no matter your age or your story. This podcast is a space for you, especially over 40, who feel stuck, off track, or disconnected from who you truly are. If you've ever thought there has to be more to life than this, you are in the right place. Here, we are going to explore with our guest how to break through fear, procrastination, and self-doubt, and reconnect with your purpose, your power, and your truth. You'll hear inspiring conversations with heart-centered guests who have experienced real transformation and who now live with intention, freedom, and alignment. This is not about surface level change. It's about radical transformations and reconnections with your authentic self. It's about designing a life that doesn't just look good on the outside, but feel right on the inside. And in every episode is an invitation to show up more fully, think more expansively, take bold, soul-aligned steps toward the life that you know is waiting for you. So thank you for being here. Let's take a deep breath together, open our hearts, step forward. And I'm so happy to welcome a very special guest today. And such a pleasure to have you, Brownell. So, Brownell.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So, Brownell Landrum is an explorer of metaphysical mysteries. In addition to being the founder of the Life is a Trip Reincarnation Stories podcasts, she's the author of over a dozen books and screenplays, ranging from nonfiction, 5 Reasons Why Bad Things Happen, to fiction, the Duet Stories novel series, as well as The End, a love story to the universe, and the newly released We Meet Again trilogy, to children's books and more. Her stories can be summarized as follows. Lose yourself in the fiction, find yourself in the truth. The Hero's Playbook, a fun, engaging program to bring out the hero in all of us. Brownell's stories dig deep into the heart and soul of the human experience, incorporating humor, mysticism, love, and life. So
thank you.
Welcome, Brownell, and it's a pleasure to welcome you. And I'd like to ask you, to kind of further introduce yourself and tell us about what you do and your passions, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I'm just really happy to be here. I enjoyed meeting you and our preparation for this, and just looking forward to sharing kind of ideas and concepts. I know we talked about things like, what is free will versus fate, which we can get into. Where does the metaphysical aspect come into some of those decisions and questions in our lives? And I love writing about it. I think one of the things that I want to do the most in terms of my purpose is just open people's hearts and minds. It doesn't matter to me if anybody believes any of the things that I believe in, as long as they're open to considering it. And then, because if anytime we can open somebody's mind, then we can open up to change and growth and, like you said, transformation and all the things you're trying to do.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, we had a great first conversation, Brownell, and this kind of, spiritual aspect, how did it come? Did you always have it? How did it develop in you? Can you just walk us through about your journey?
Yeah, I would say, that one of the things that was kind of a defining moment in my life is I met somebody, gosh, it was over 30 years ago, I think, or somewhere in that vicinity. And he said to me, he said, well, you know, Brownell, you're an explorer and you'll always be an explorer. And I think that that really was kind of like this explanation. Somebody really saw who I really was, because you know, as soon as I think I have all the answers, I find out that there are more answers, there are more questions, and there are more answers. And you know, they say that you know, the sign of somebody not being intelligent is to think they have all the answers. And I certainly don't think I have all the answers. I just like looking at the questions and kind of exploring them. And I love doing it in a manner. I've written fiction and nonfiction, as you mentioned. And I love doing it in both, because especially fiction, sometimes it allows people to suspend their disbelief, and then they can open up their minds and they think, okay, they may never pick up a nonfiction book on reincarnation or the afterlife or, you know, anything kind of metaphysical, but they might read a book on it or see a movie about it and think, oh, wait a minute, I've never thought of that. It's kind of like, you don't need to believe in time travel to enjoy Back to the Future, right? You can still enjoy the story, but then all of a sudden you think, what would be possible if we could change the past, or we could move into the future? And so that's just one of the things I love to do, is just to kind of open up those kinds of discussions and throw, you know, the truth, as you mentioned, lose yourself in the fiction, find yourself in the truth, you know, to throw truth into the stories while also, you know, weaving a story that might be fictional. In fact, you mentioned that I have a podcast called Life is a Trip, Reincarnation and Afterlife and Spiritual Stories. And it's about stories. It's not an interview show. It's just people sharing stories, and they can be fictional or factual. And that's really important, because then if you hear it could be fictional or factual, then nobody's going to try to come out and go, you have to prove that, or I don't believe that, or whatever. You can just go, just enjoy the story. And if it resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, no problem.
It is beautiful. Thank you, Brownell. And see, I shared with you that, you know, I started my spiritual journey of awakening, you know, just a few years ago. And really, I just completely changed my life, because I used to be very rational, you know, very kind of down to earth. But, you know, I started opening up, and things grew on me. And see, this concept, for instance, of reincarnation, very new to me. So can you kind of walk us through, you know, what is it, and, you know, and how, you know, perhaps share some of the stories, perhaps, you know, you heard or you wrote about this, if it's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do really love writing reincarnation stories. I've written quite a few of them now. And of course, you know, then you kind of are also potentially weaving in the afterlife and what happens before we're born and what happens after we're born and how all that weaves in together. The trilogy I just launched last year is called We Meet Again, and we hit #1 on all the top categories a little while ago. So
Well,
that was really, really exciting. And that includes like time travel romance, as well as metaphysical stories, you know, some pretty interesting categories. And that one is about a modern day couple who meets, and then they have some sort of familiarity. And I think a lot of us know that feeling, right? You meet somebody and you're like, this is not the first time we've met. Something is clicking here. And it's kind of like a Da Vinci Code meets Outlander with a reincarnation theme. So it starts with current day, and then it goes back to a lifetime in the 1930s in Brazil. Then it goes back to the 1500s in Austria, and they travel to England. And then there's also a Middle Ages, and they were famous. I call it like this epic reincarnation mystery about a famous couple from history who's reincarnated today to fulfill a prophecy. And so it's got this huge Da Vinci Code type of prophecy and message tied to the history, as well as, you know, a love story. And I just find it super fun to write those kinds of stories. And I also, in this one in particular, because it's a mystery, I had to weave in facts and information from the past that would lead to the present. So it got a lot of information. It opened up a lot of information. I'd known a little bit about the history of reincarnation, but to get really deep into going back as far as Pythagoras, which is 2,500 years ago, and just in awe of the teachings that he had and delivered. And he was, as you know, a big teacher for Aristotle, Plato, Socrates. I mean, he set a foundation for those people. Most of us only know him from the Pythagorean theorem, and the geometry, but he went a lot deeper than that. And so it was fun tying it into kind of that kind of history. And also, here's a little teaser in that the word Renaissance means rebirth.
Yes.
And so a lot of people don't really put the connection there, that maybe there's a connection with Renaissance rebirth and the topic of my story. So I love looking at all of that, and I love there's a character in the book who was a real life person named Giordano Bruno, and he is one of my kind of heroes in history. He got burned at the stake by the Catholic Church because he had these kinds of beliefs, and but yet he had the courage to stand by his beliefs, kind of no matter what. And so my characters get to meet him, they meet Shakespeare, it's a lot of fun to write, because you meet characters and you meet this couple, but then you get to see who they were before and how would they be under these different circumstances. And so I get to weave in some of the reincarnation stuff and the history of reincarnation within the church, because there's a lot of obstacles, obviously within the Christian church mainly. I think we talked about the Kabbalah and how it, wait a minute, there's a history there too, that I want you to kind of bring up. But I don't get into that in these particular stories, but I do kind of establish, like, wait a minute, do people really know that 2,000 years ago, reincarnation was like the established belief? People didn't question it. It was what they believed. And so it's only after that it was kind of edited and taken out of Christianity and some of those some of those aspects. So and you probably know about the Gnostic Gospels, and that there was reference to reincarnation in those. And so it's to me, it's just fun as a mystery to kind of keep digging into that, and then throw in some characters and some real life issues of, what if it happened to you or me? What would it be like if we found out we were somebody famous in a previous lifetime? And maybe, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, but maybe what would happen if you or I left a clue for our future selves?
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yes.
like, wait, and that only our future selves could find. And what if that particular clue was like, change the world? So that's a little bit about that story that I love writing.
This is fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing. And you see, you mentioned about Kabbalah, and I said, I started studying Kabbalah not long ago, so I'm quite new in this field. But you see, there's this idea as well that basically there are the souls, and the souls are there. I mean, they're kind of reincarnate in a 3D, body. The idea being to improve and actually, to fulfill a mission on this planet, to be a better person and to bring something to the world. And each time, the soul is coming back, it's with this purpose. How does this resonate with you, Brownell?
Yeah, I do. In fact, I run a group that anybody's listening wants to join. It's called the Life is a Trip group in Facebook. And somebody asked the question, literally just this morning, like, what is the soul? How do you define what the soul is, right?
Yes.
And I always like to let other people answer, kind of before I weigh in on what I think, because I always love to hear what other people's perspective is, right? Because I'm always exploring all these other things. And my answer is that, there's a part of us that existed before we were born, and that will be here after we die. And that is what I call the soul. And then the soul, when it decides to incarnate, it chooses a body and becomes us. And that whole process right there, I just said in a sentence, is huge, right? Why would this soul choose this body? Why would it choose to be in this particular body, this particular time period in this particular family with these particular lessons. I don't know if you ever watched or listened to the Invisibilia podcast. It was done by NPR, but there was an episode of that called Back When I Was Older. And it was about a little boy who I think was 4, who remembered his past lives. And he also remembered being on the other side, choosing his parents. And it's so precious because he talks about, from the point of view of a 4-year-old, but he talks about going to the mommy and daddy store to pick out his parents. And I just thought that was so cute.
This is cute. And actually, I'd like to share a story with you. And again, this was even before perhaps I kind of started my journey. But at a given time I was traveling, there was a young man next to me and we were chatting. I could see he had like a lot of, spirituality and depth into him. And I don't know, we came on this subject and he said, oh, yeah, I know, one of my past lives, I used to be a soldier in the army of Napoleon, and he had vivid, souvenirs of how it went. It was like, yeah, he said there was no doubt. So I thought, okay.
Isn't that great? Yeah. Yeah, in fact, General Patton, who is a historical general in the U.S., there's a movie about him, right? A biography about him, fictional, whatever they call it, biopic. And but there's a scene where he says, "Wait a minute, turn here." And he goes to, and the guy's driving is like, "Why am I turning here?" And he's like, and then he sees this old battlefield that he was in. And so in fact he wrote a really interesting poem that is about that he's been many people many times before, and so yeah, there are some really amazing people in history that believed in reincarnation. I mean, again, I'm in the US, but Benjamin Franklin, big believer in reincarnation. He even has an epitaph that talks about, I'll be back, basically, in different language. But and so when you realize that there's so many really interesting people, and one of my favorite quotes when people go, "Well, I don't know, I still don't know if I believe in reincarnation." First of all, I say, okay, it's up to you. To me, it makes more sense. Voltaire said, it's no more surprising to think that we were born multiple times than we were born once. I mean, like, how is one more correct than the other? I mean, and it makes more sense to think that we're born more than once. Because, one of the things that I find so beautiful about reincarnation is that if, in fact, I wrote a lyrics to a song is like, we're everyone we've ever been, everywhere and every when. And so it's when you realize, wait a minute, and I also wrote another lyric to a different song that says, the soul has no gender, no creed, and no race. Love can be found in any face. Right. And so when you realize the soul doesn't have a gender, we choose a body that has a gender, more likely. But we've probably been male and female. We've probably been multiple races. We've lived in different countries. We've been probably, rich and poor. We've probably had so many different kinds of experience, short lives, longer lives. And when you realize that, it's like, how can you have racism in the world if we've all been different races? Right? How can you have like, oh, I'm so superior because I have money and you don't, and then we were poor in another lifetime, or we'll be poor in the next lifetime? It's all a learning experience, like you said, to help you evolve and grow and evolve and elevate. Yeah.
I mean, this is absolutely fascinating. And we're discussing something else. There's this quote. I mean, this is, for instance, one of the principles in Kabbalah is that everything happens for a reason. There are no coincidences. And I really would like to have your take on this, Brownell.
Well, I love that question, because when people say, oh, everything happens for a reason, I say, yeah, I literally wrote the book on it, right? Okay. And my first book is called 5 Reasons Why Bad Things Happen.
Okay.
And so I was going through a very difficult time in my life. And I kept thinking, this has to be happening for a reason. Like, it has to be. And so all of a sudden I'm kind of in a meditative state. and this is over 20 years ago. And I'm in this meditative state, and all of a sudden these 5 reasons come to me. And that's what spawned me to write the book. And I don't know that everything, right? I mean, like what I ate for dinner yesterday, I don't know, happened for a reason, right?
Okay, yeah.
You know, I mean, like I think you can get a little bit too into that. But I do think when you look at the major events in your life, and you realize they happen for a reason, and also I don't know, are you familiar with the book When Bad Things Happen to Good People? Have you ever heard of that book?
No, I have not, Brownell.
It's from the 80s, so it was around a long time. But I met the man who wrote the book, Rabbi Harold Kushner, lovely man, and he graciously read my book. And but he came back to me and said, yeah, but I think it's all random. I don't think it happens for a reason. No, I had the exact same expression. Your face is like, what? But what it did, you know, again, everything, you know, like, okay, I'm going to learn from this experience. And it made me do some research between the people who believe things happen for a reason and people who don't. And there is some really interesting research that says the people who believe things happen for a reason are a lot happier than those who don't. The research even goes a little further. It says even if they're wrong, they're still happier. And because then you're looking for that reason. You know, you're looking for that blessing in disguise. You're looking for that lesson. You're looking for that thing to help you learn from it to move forward. And if you don't, then you're just a victim, right? Then you're just like, oh, well, a meteor could hit this building right now. And you're like, yeah, it could. What would I do about it? You know? So I just found that, I don't know, I thought you might find that interesting.
Well, you know what? Again, this resonates a lot with me. And I've got to say, in my life, I had a lot of what I used to call incredible coincidences which arrived. I mean, some really events which could have changed my life. It could be a relationship, it could be different levels. And, you know, when I think of this, at that time I discarded, you know, my rational mind says, you know what, it's like, it's there. But now, looking at the same events, you know, from a distance, I know it was there for a reason. I could have chosen a different path in life several times. And now, as said, I'm much more, how do you say, sensitive? Is it sensitive to that? Yeah. And there's this notion there is that, I guess, you know, for me, there is like a superior power. Okay, the name we give it, for me, the universe. Before, I would not even have said that. People say God. Okay, there are different, you know, names there. But I think we are on a kind of path. There is like a path which is there, but there's this notion of free will that we have at the end of the day, even if things are in front of us, we have the choice. And depending on what we do, this is going to, you know, influence the rest of our life. And I know this is a notion which is very dear to you. So I would like you to,
it's one of my favorite things to talk
about this, Brownell.
Yeah. Well, before we get into that, I just wanted to reflect on what you were talking about as far as looking back. And I have a concept that I might write a separate book on it, but I wove it into a new book that you mentioned, the Hero's Playbook. I mentioned it in there. But a concept I call reverse optimism, where we can look back at those things and go, oh, you know, that was hard. And that was really difficult. And I made it through it. And now I can look back and say, okay, that happened for a reason. And I'm glad that it happened. And if I really think that's I'm looking forward to digging into that deeper, but in life and in my writing. But I really think it's important, because then if you go, okay, now you're facing something, you think at some point, will you look back on this and be glad that you went through it? So it's an important part. And the Hero's Playbook is tied to the hero's journey, and it's helping people, whether they're writers or just individuals, kind of navigate their own hero's journey in their life. And it's just a bunch of activities and things like that. And we could talk about that or not, but to look back and go, that happened for a reason. I'm thankful for that. It was really hard. And there are a lot of things that people go through that are really, really difficult that you or I go, oh, no, I don't want that. Like, please don't bring that to me. But then those same people are going, that was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And so whether it's, a relationship ending or an illness or, all kinds of different things that could happen. And when we look at storytelling, when we've been into storytelling, those are the heroes that we like, who are overcoming those obstacles. And so that's like, we admire the resilience and the fortitude and the fact that they learned and they grew. And that's what we want in ourselves, right? So it's a really important aspect. So now we get into the fate, the free will. How does that all work? So where there's kind of a continuum, predestination on one end, and the other is, it's random as can be. Where does that all blend? And of course, this is my perspective, and I write about it actually in more than one of my books. People can see it differently, and that's great, right? It's not something I'm going to be like getting in a debate with them, unless they want, and then we can have fun debating it, but I'm not going to force anybody on anything. But the way I look at it is we have free will in two places. We have free will before we're born, and we have free will once we get here. And so the free will before we're born is when we are, in fact, I'll quote one of my children's books. It says, we decide on our lessons, the paths we will take, awards we might go for, and mistakes we might make. For life isn't easy and not always fun, but easy is boring, like games always won. So we set up our challenges and mountains so high to test our endurance and reach for the sky. So it goes further than that. But we do, before we're here, we're like, okay, what do I want to learn? Who do I want to be with? And yeah, I mean, sometimes this is really hard for people to accept, sometimes me included, but like, okay, I chose that body or that family or that situation because it's going to be hard, and hard is good. And you're like, yeah, you get here and go, what the hell was I thinking? But I think that's a part of it free will. So I think then we map out what I think is like a map. I think it's not all determined, but it's like a roadmap, so that when we get here, then we have free will to decide, do we take a right turn, a left turn? Do we zoom through an intersection, or do we sit on it for a while? Do we, take the proverbial high road or the low road? Because sometimes, people say, oh, well, no matter what, your dreams will be, happen. And you're like, no, you could take the low road and you could miss some of the good stuff, right? That's part of the lessons too. You're still going to learn, right? You're still going to have some experiences, but you might miss out on some of the good stuff if you take the low road in life. And then we can also go off-road. And I think that's the part where it gets really interesting, is thinking, okay, this wasn't my destiny, but I'm going to do something that breaks free from what I was supposed to do and learn something new. And I went through that experience in the last year, which we can get to if you want, about the story that I wrote that's semi-autobiographical, that changed a lot for me in the last year and a half. But I see it so that, we have that free will to just make those choices. And yes, certain people, certain experiences, certain lessons are on that path, right? So I think it's really fun. I don't know if you have any experiences where, like you were supposed to meet this person, but you kept not meeting them. But eventually, like you had all these opportunities to meet them, or all these opportunities to take this path or learn this lesson, maybe even because I'm so delighted. It's so much fun to meet you and see your energy of your own explosive spiritual growth and your joy in it, right? And you may have had opportunities earlier in your life to have gone through that, but maybe it wouldn't have been as important or as meaningful. But maybe no matter what, it might have been on your path, right? So anyway, go ahead and weigh in. I could talk about that forever.
No, absolutely. And of course, I would like you to share, this autobiographic story, please, Brownell.
Yeah, but tell me what you think about what I said about the free will thing.
Actually, you know what? You see, I'm smiling because it so much resonates with me. You see, at many levels. First, you see, again, now, I experienced it, but I heard this concept. I mean, this is from Kabbalah, but I think it's, from could be different places as well, that there is a kind of, as you say, roadmap for us. We go left, we go right. But depending on what we do, the superior power always tries to put that back on the road. It's like, it's like a GPS. You go with your car, you turn right, it tells you go straight. No, you go right. Okay, what it does afterwards, it's going to redirect you, because universe never always wants the best for you. It's like, it's there, and afterwards you choose, but there's no judgment. So I resonate with that. I mean, it's now when I look at challenges, and of course things happen, but the way I look at this, it's the question I'm asking myself is, okay, why is this in my story? It's really, even, I mean, can even say, I meet someone, for instance, and sometimes I can get triggered, and we know what trigger is. Trigger is a reminder that we've got some unhealed trauma. That is another topic. But again, this person is there for a reason. So when we look at this, instead of kind of judging and, we think, okay, thank you. I'm thankful to the universe, thinking, right, I know what's going on there. And okay, I'm going to take this direction. And this other thing with free will as well. And you see, because of our mind, very often we are stuck, because the mind doesn't want us to change. Change is dangerous. Please don't do that. And we've got this little voice, coming, it's like always making us aware of danger. It's the reptilian part of the brain, and we go into the fight, flight, or fight mode. But what I realize now is that whenever I've got a fear, of doing something, and our biggest fears, actually, they are when we embrace them, and when we confront them, and when we overcome them. This is when we have the biggest breakthroughs in life. So really, my take is now, and as a coach, as a life coach, obviously, I'm sharing this with my coaches, is that, okay, what's question, what is stopping us, you, for instance, to do this and this thing? And very often it's limiting beliefs coming from childhood, and, they can be linked to traumas, etc. But when people become aware of that, it's like, oh, wow, right, yes, I can do this. And then once you go over this fear, all of a sudden, your life opens up completely, and your horizons open up. So, this free will, for me, it's as very important as well, is to have courage. Courage is to take action, to do things which we are very uncomfortable with, particularly if it's the unknown, we don't know. But this is what's going to bring us to the next level.
Yeah, I love all that. In fact, there's kind of two aspects in that are really important. One is, spoiler alert, but of the 5 reasons why bad things happen, the thing they all have in common is to get us to change. Yes. Right?
Yes.
And sometimes things have to get so bad in order for us to change. And sometimes we need to be pushed off a cliff to find out we can fly, kind of thing,
Exactly.
So, so that I'm really glad you kind of wove that in. And then the other part that you wove in is also something I find really interesting, and especially, and it actually really flows into the story, the autobiographical story, which, by the way, is free to anybody watching. At least the first part of it is. And it's and when you're talking about I'll use the words the universe. I personally do have kind of a problem with using the term the universe, because the universe is all, and therefore it's dark and light. And I do believe that there is dark energy and light energy. I do believe that there is benevolent energy and malevolent energy. And so I prefer to use and I, you can use the word God, you can use divine, you can use infinite intelligence, you can use, whatever. But I think it's important, like when we're praying, if you pray to the universe, you're praying to all of it. And that can be risky because you could be bringing in something that isn't that helpful. So there's my little caveat on that, because I do have kind of an opinion on that. So I would rather pray to God and and we talked about this yesterday when we were just first chatting, is, what is that? And that to me is an energy. It's just an energy of pure love. And so if you tune in, you can just pray to love if you want. It doesn't have to be, it's not some dude in the sky with a beard, unless that's what you want it to be. And then however, but I make sure that you see that energy as pure love, whatever it is. And so to me, it's much better to pray or to ask for that energy than the collective, which could do the opposite. So there's my little caveat on all of that. But just using that, because I know you meant it from the purest point of view, is where does, I call it the upstairs, where do they come in, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're looking at our path and we're looking at what we're dealing with. And okay, yes, I drew this map. Yes, I take right and left turns, but where are they in the role? And of course, we can cut them off and not follow that guidance and not listen to those messages or those synchronicities or the coincidences that you talk about. We can shut that down and be on our own, if you will. Or we can kind of even get into the muck of the darker energy of the planet, like the survival of the fittest, and like, I'm going to win and I'm going to get in this competitive world, and cut it off even in a different, darker way. But I also think that, that there is a role of the upstairs. And I went through such a profound experience in that in the last year, almost 2 years now. And that and I wrote about it when you mentioned the end, a love story to the universe. That's the story that is semi-autobiographical. And I was writing a story, and I thought, okay, I'm going to write it from the point of view of the upstairs, right? So who are they and what are they seeing from their perspective? And I'm writing, and all of a sudden I realize this isn't fiction. They're telling me who they are. And it's this team, and they're hilarious, by the way. And so that was really so much fun, is to see how silly and fun they are and how much fun they have in their jobs and helping us. And we kind of think of it as like, oh, so serious, and no, this is so important. Like, they're having a good time and they're really trying to help us. And sometimes we don't listen. And sometimes we can be stubborn in that. And so it was so interesting writing this. And I call it X, Y, and the Z's, because I felt like they didn't want me to know names. They wanted just to be known as who they were, as opposed to being defined by a name. So and so I have a character X and Y, and they're in the guides kind of category, right? And so they're serving as guides. And then the Z's I'm defining as what I call traffic angels. And I think that, like, if you're here and somebody's here and they're trying to get you together, there's a lot of logistics in that. Okay. And this story was, how do you get an American woman living in Colorado to meet a British man in Tunisia? Wow. And so it was like, wow. I mean, the things, like, I was determined. I thought, well, what happened at first is I got kicked out of my apartment, essentially kicked out of my apartment in Colorado. I mean, I say kicked out. I could have paid 50% rate increase, but I wasn't going to do that. No. Okay. So I thought, well, I'll go to Italy. I was writing about Italy. Hint, spoiler alert. We Meet Again is a lot of it set in Italy. And so, and the famous couple is a famous Italian couple. I'll just kind of leave it at that. And so I thought I'd go to Italy. Guess what? They're not taking applications for visas, not even taking applications. So I had no hope other than going on a tourist visa, which meant I could go for 3 months, but then I had to be gone for 3 months. Mm-hmm. And then I'm looking at where am I going to go, and it had to be out of the EU, or I could have gone to the UK, but it was winter, so I thought, let me look south. And I found Tunisia. And so, like, if you think about, yes, I was following my own breadcrumbs, but they were throwing stuff in my way to get me there. I like to look at them. I think you were kind of alluding to something like this, but I like They're like border collies, and they're going to whack you on the side to keep you in line, to keep you going the way they want you to go. They're going to keep knocking you that way. So it was so interesting to get in that position where they're telling me who they are and what they want. And then all of a sudden, I was always in this, kind of world of set your goals, set your intentions, visualize your success, blah, blah, blah. And this was a whole 180 for me. Because it was like, no, wait a minute. They have a plan. I need to surrender to their plan. I need to do what they want me to do. And we don't know each other very well, but that was not so easy for me to do. And yet I'm sitting there going, okay, what do y'all want? Show me, and I'll do it. And they led me to write that story. And then I wrote a part 2 and a part 3 of it. A lot of people are saying it's my best writing. It is very funny. So there's a lot of humor in it. Those guys are hilarious. And it's also about me going, what are you trying to guide me to do? What is all this happening for? What's the reason? And it's been really, really interesting. And even to the point of not long ago, maybe within the last month or so, they gave me a vision of my future. Now, we've all done visualization, and we all done like, oh, I want to set a goal, and now I can visualize what it was. Or we might have even had like a psychic or somebody say, oh, here's what's going to happen for you. This was not either of those. This was like, turn on the TV, we're going to show you your future. And let me tell you, Daniel, there is no way I would have ever picked that future for myself. It was just too lofty. It was too high. It's too like, it's so unfathomable to me. Now, I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but it was, this whole concept of, okay, I have to just let go. And, people might say, let go, let God, or whatever expression. They're laughing right now because they're like, God, no, I don't know about that. But it's so interesting to kind of surrender. And just be like, what do you want me to do? And sometimes they'll come right and answer and tell me exactly what they want. And sometimes I get crickets. And I don't know if it's because they want me to figure it out or if they haven't figured it out, but it threw my life in a much different angle in terms of fluidity about what's going to happen. And maybe even like, okay, it's that map, like those movies where you take the map and you swipe the table and you clear the table. Maybe they're wiping that map that was my original map off and they're taking over. I don't know. But anyway, I thought you might enjoy that story.
Thank you so much. I mean, this is first, it sounds a lot of fun, you say, with these guys doing the things and logistics and all that. And again, I resonate with that because, see, I used to be worried. I used to overthink. I used to, to plan, and I used to be a perfectionist as well. And I realized, I wasted a lot of time and good energy in my life. And you mentioned an expression before, Brownell. It's letting go, surrendering. And since I started doing that, my life has changed. I have even goosebumps now when I'm talking about this. It's really because it was not me, or let's say, or perhaps it was my original me. It's that when I really decide to fully live in the present moment and to get detached from the past. Of course, you learn from it, but you don't stay there because with resentment, with anger, with anything. No, you just, okay, events and life happens, sometimes not good, but okay, you learn from that, and the future, we don't know what's going to happen, so very often anxiety, it's about fear of the future, but we cannot control a lot of that. So we can only see what we can control now. And when we live now in this moment and we are grateful and we do good for others, and and we are ourselves, I mean, for me it is like it's a little bit of definition of happiness. Again, everybody has a different one. And I mentioned as well because, oh yeah, you see, when we surrender, when we let go, basically what we do as well is we follow our heart, we follow our intuition instead of our logic brains. And we realize that actually intuition is something unbelievable. It doesn't deceive us. It doesn't, it's there. And very often, if we make a decision, could be even meeting a person or a situation or a job, but there was something, in our mind which says, oh, hold on a second, a little alarm, but we decided to discard it, thinking, no, it's nothing. We realize it afterwards. When an issue happens, we knew it was there. So you see, the more we lean into that, at least I'm speaking about me, the easiest it is. And what you just mentioned about, turning out the TV and something you see there, I mean, you see, I so much relate to this. I'll give you an example. The other day, I couldn't sleep so well. And, I woke up in the middle of the night, right? I mean, 4 or 5. And, okay, I took my phone. And so I just, and I don't know, and then I start listening to someone. It was like, gentleman, quite spiritual. And, and I was there. It's unbelievable. It's exactly what I needed at that time. It was so much aligned. And very often, similar things happen. Could be a reel, could be, an article I read. So now, before I would have discarded, I would have brushed it off. But now I think I just say, thank you, thank you, universe. Just put it there. How it happens, I don't have a clue, but it doesn't matter. I just see it's there, and I see it's there for a reason. See, this is my new self. So I fully resonate with you.
It was so interesting because, and what was also interesting is that I was in Tunisia again up until a few weeks ago, and for a couple of months. And while I'm staying in this resort, which is a beautiful place, and I had a lovely room, and all of a sudden they decided one day they're going to upgrade my room to the best room in the whole resort. And it was the most surreal feeling because it was like, this is a message, get ready for the upgrade, that be prepared. And like I said, this vision was like, I've never would, if you said, do your ultimate dream, it wouldn't have been that good. But what it did is also, in the past, I might have been like, well, then they better make that happen. Why aren't they making that happen? Or what do I need to do to make that happen? And then, like you said, you get a message, and I got a message very similar. I think it was just a Facebook post somebody that did, but I loved it. And it was like, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's just like, don't chase your dreams. Be so in alignment with your purpose that your dreams chase you.
Wow.
Isn't that beautiful? Yeah, and it's like, I've been so obsessed with chasing, and now it's like, let go and let it happen. And of course, I'm going to do the things I need to do. I've always done the things I need to do. But also just let go. And instead of worrying about whether that's going to happen or not, it doesn't even matter. It's like, it's not up to me. And I just need to do my day-to-day stuff and do what I'm guided to do. And what happens, happens. So it's not like I'm even attached to that vision, but what it did is just like upgrading my room. It's like, wait a minute, this is an upgrade in my life. I mean, I was just seriously that whole day kind of like, this is unbelievable. I mean, I had a view of the Mediterranean right from my room, huge glass wall of the, and then on this side was a patio, terrace and a patio overlooking the pool of the resort. I mean, so the Mediterranean sunrise woke me up every morning. It was so incredible. And so sometimes our visions for ourselves might not be as good as that they have. And so the more we listen, the more we can maybe get in alignment with something that might even be better.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've never been to Tunisia, but I've heard about the island of Jerba. Isn't it there by any chance?
Yes. Yeah, that's south of where I was. Yeah.
I didn't know, but I know it's beautiful, and it's so.
And it's super affordable. The people are so lovely. So yeah, and especially you're in the UK, so it's really easy to fly down for you. There are a lot of Brits down in Tunisia.
You see, it's good we talk about this because I think I'm going to be there as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just have feeling, and but you see what happens. It's very interesting. If I may reflect on what you just said about this story about the room. Sometimes we've got in our mind this belief, no, I can't get something different. Oh, do I deserve it? No, it's like there's this belief, no, it can't happen. But when we are open to receiving, I would say in any way, shape, or form, and when we are not attached, you know what? Let us surprise us. I mean, whomever superior power, however we call it, it wants the best for us. But we've got to be ready to say, okay, I'm ready to receiving. And when we are, see, and this is it as well, you speak about something else, perhaps for your life to come, just embrace it, see, and just, go with this flow. And see,
Yeah.
one thing I'd like, our listeners, to be, to remember is that it's never too late in life to go after your dreams. When people say, I'm too old, I'm too this, I don't have the money, all that, it's there's excuses. If we really want something, if something is important, if something matters to us, we really need to go for it. We need to give it our best, if it's a calling. Because, the worst thing which can happen when we arrive at the end of our life is that it's when people are asked, do you regret anything in your life? Anything you would have failed? I said, no, I tried something, didn't work out, but it's fine. What do people regret is the things that they really wanted to do and they didn't do. So,
Yeah.
This feeling, it's just like, it's a kind of reminder to anybody listening here. It's never too late. Of course, sometimes, it's important to surround ourselves as well with the right people, like-minded people who are going to uplift us, who are going to motivate us. You see, this is very important. But when we do that, and, when we have faith, everything's possible.
Yeah. And it wasn't so easy for me to trust, and have faith. I mean, I did have to be, kind of in this place where then all of a sudden it opened up the portal for them to tell me who they are. And it's been a different, I mean, talk about, you went through your transformation a few years ago. This was a year and a half ago for me, when it started. And, it's different. It sure is different.
No, and it's beautiful. You see, I had a friend who told me about, angels and this. Again, it was like, okay, you see, I don't know. We all have somebody protecting us and, looking and sometimes, you hear this. It's like, see, I have a brother, and at a given time, he's all over the world. He likes traveling, and at a given time, he said he was about to take a ferry. I think it was in South Korea, to go somewhere. And at the last minute, there was something, and he missed it. And this ferry had a problem, and it kind of sank, and a lot of people died.
Oh my God.
So you see, there's this thing, and I heard it now so many times. Is that if things happen, we miss a train, we miss a plane, there's something. The first reaction would be, oh, it's terrible, I missed it. How did it happen to me? But sometimes there's a reason there, that actually it happened for our good, And I heard about people saying, they were a little late and they should have been at a certain place, and afterwards they found out there was a huge accident and a lot of people.
Yes.
So again, it's, people believe what they want to believe, and but it's interesting when we can, look at different perspectives in life. It's not about convincing anyone, as you said before, Brownell. People think what they want to think. Just that sometimes when we are open to, we can look at things differently. We can. So, look, Brownell, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. And I think we could go on for hours, and I'm sure we'll have another opportunity to talk together. But Brownell, when people want to find more about you, about your books, etc., what's the best way?
Well, I'm the only Brownell Landrum in the world.
Okay.
So that should help. It's pretty easy to Google me. Look for the Life is a Trip podcast, but also look for the Life is a Trip group on Facebook. That's a really good way to stay in the community. And we get into a lot of really interesting topics and discuss a lot of things. So, and share stories. And it's really about sharing stories. So that would be a great way. Hopefully you'll have a link so people can download the end, A Love Story to the Universe, at least the first part of it. And of course, you can find me on Amazon, all my books, 5 Reasons Why Bad Things Happen. The End is also there, all 3 parts. We Meet Again, some of my other books are there too. So, and I love hearing from fans. So please reach out. I love it. And I have a YouTube channel, so you can find some of my other videos, which I'm sure I'll put this one on there too. So.
Well, I mean, it's been such a pleasure. Obviously, all your details will be, in the YouTube comments so that people will be able to see you. And it's been such a pleasure, Ronald. Thank you so much. It's these are sometimes you think experiences in life, and you don't know where it's going, but it's it's unique, and I learned a lot today.
Me too. I've really had a great time. I've enjoyed it a lot.
So thank you so much, and I'll sure we'll meet each other again.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.